Hello everyone. So my name is Valerie. Hopefully I've met most of you guys, or you've seen me, or we've talked through email or what have you. So this lecture is very important. Make sure you watch it before your first on-site. I can't tell you when that is because on-site times are different for different people, but watching this lecture is very important before your first on-site. So this mini lecture is talking about activity analysis. The main takeaway from this lecture is going to be, what is activity analysis and why is that important to occupational therapy? For this lecture, we're going to be using the Occupational Therapy Practice Framework, the 4th edition, very heavily. So I'd make sure you have that with you because it'd be best if you could follow along as we go. I know I've already said it. It's very important that you have a very good understanding of this book. It really lays out, our scope of practice, what we do, how we do it, why is it a skill. So if you don't understand the framework well yet, make sure that is something that you put as a priority. Understanding the framework is critical. So an activity analysis. Why is it important to occupational therapy? Let's start at the beginning. What is an activity analysis? So an activity analysis, it's an important process to OT, as we know. It helps us to understand the demands a specific activity places on a client. So it looks at the typical demands of the activity, it looks at the range of skills involved in its performance, and it looks at various cultural meanings attributed to the activity. So when we start thinking about the bigger picture of where the activity analysis comes into play, if you turn to page 16 of your framework, there we go, you're going to be looking at the evaluation page, and this is where we're going to begin. So taking even another step back, when we're looking at an evaluation, we're looking at 3 things: creating an occupational profile, analysis of the occupation performance, and synthesis of the evaluation process. So let's dive a little deeper and talk about the analysis of the occupational performance. When we're looking at the occupational performance, that also involves 3 steps. The synthesis of the occupational profile. So, the evaluation, we created it, we gathered the information, but we're really talking about what does that information mean? Completing an occupational or activity analysis, and then selecting, using, and administering specific assessments. So in this course, we'll spend a lot of time on the occupational profile. We're spending time right now on the activity analysis, and then we'll spend some time as well on selecting, using, administering specific assessments. But right now, let's focus on the activity analysis. Now you see in that bullet, it says completing occupational or activity analysis. So what's the difference? So when we're talking about an occupational analysis, we're talking about, an occupational analysis is performed with a specific understanding of the specific occupations the client wants or needs to do and the actual context which the occupations are performed. Okay? The activity analysis is a generic decontextualized with the primary goal to understand the typical demands of the activity within a given culture. So what are we really looking at here? Many professions use activity analysis. Physical therapists use activity analysis. A lot of you guys, occupational therapy assistants, physical therapy assistants may or may not be using informal versions of activity analysis. Other professions, nursing, sometimes social work, sometimes, physicians, depending on what's going on in the situation, may use some type of activity analysis. When we're talking about the occupational analysis, that requires a skilled understanding of both occupation and context. Now, right now we're pulling it in, we're really stepping back, we're starting with the basics, and we're focusing on the activity analysis, because in order to be able to complete an occupational analysis, you have to be able to complete the activity analysis, right? Because the activity analysis is the generic decontextualized. Once you get that, once you're expertised in that, you're able to add the extra skill to it to think about, the skill of understanding the occupation and the context. So what are we looking at during the activity? The activity analysis analyzes the demands of the activity, I talked about, a couple slides back, or occupation. I hope you guys all have a good understanding of activity versus occupation. If you do not, that's something you need to know for, of course, this class, but also just occupational therapy in general, to see which of the following need to complete the activity. So using the framework, again, I would have that with you so we can kind of do this together. We have body structures, which are on page 54. Oh, up there. Yes, they are. So body structures, we're talking about anatomical parts of the body, such as organs, limbs, their components. We're talking about, the structure of the nervous system, structures related to eyes and ears, voice and speech, structures related to digestive, metabolic, all of that. The body functions, looking at pages 51 through 54. We're talking more about, there we go, it's the very bottom of the page, the physiological functions of the body system. If you switch the page over. So you can see for body functions, body structures, we're talking about structures of, components of the body. Body functions, we're talking about mental functions, sensory functions, neuromuscular movement-related functions, cardiovascular. If you break that down a little bit more, we're talking about, specific mental functions like attention, memory, emotional. We might be talking about sensory functions. We might be talking about visual functions. So quality of vision, visual acuity, things of that nature. Now, all of this, these 4 bullets can be a little bit tricky. They can be easy to kind of overlap and not see the differences. I feel that if you have the tables in front of you and you're able to look at them and you can actually visually see the difference quite well, but make sure you have a good understanding of what's the difference between a body structure, a body function, performance skills, performance patterns, because there is a very clear difference, as you can tell, as we're going through this. So performance skills brings us to page 43. So performance skills, we're talking more about observable, goal-directed actions results in client's quality of performance desired occupations, talking about motor skills like stabilizing, aligning positions, reaching, bending, things of that nature. Maybe, organizing space and objects, adapting performance, noticing and responding, adjust. So again, you can kind of see how they relate to the body functions specifically for the last ones that I've been talking about, but there are very clear differences. And then, of course, you have performance patterns. There we go. Performance patterns, the habits, routines, roles, rituals that may be associated with different lifestyles. So then that breaks down as well. You might be thinking performance patterns, the habits, routines, roles. If you are getting well versed on your frames of references and your occupation-based model, the performance patterns are definitely going to be something that's on your radar just to get you prepared for later on in this course. So when we analyze the demands of the activity or occupation, we were looking at the body structures, the body functions, the performance skills, and performance patterns. Again, very clear distinction between all 4 for those. Make sure you have a good understanding. Activity and occupational demands. It includes the following: tools and resources needed, where and with whom the activity takes place, how the activity is challenging the client's capabilities, and the meaning the client derives from the activity. So if we go to page 19, if you start at the bottom of page 19, it talks about occupational and activity analysis. Onto page 20, this talks a lot about what we had talked about earlier too, which is what is the difference between the two and why it's important to know the two. So activity and occupational demands. So how do we help? So the occupational demands are specific to each activity, right? It depends on what you're doing, depends on the demands of the activity. If you change one aspect of the activity, it could change the entire activity to increase or decrease successful completion. What does an activity analysis tell us? It's an excellent evaluation tool. I use it all of the time. I use it on my evaluation. I use it throughout the length of stay. Heck, I might even use it the day of discharge when I'm still trying to figure something out if needed. We're always assessing throughout the treatment. That is 100% true. It takes the information to determine which areas are difficult. Then we can look at how to make the client more successful. So as we mentioned on the last slide, you can change one aspect of the activity, which can completely change, the success of the activity. You can make it easier or harder. You want to think of grading up and grading down, which is very important. All right, and so these are the references. So again, the vast majority of what I got through was through the framework. I would highly recommend you have a good understanding of it. For a thorough understanding of this, again, you want to make sure you know what the difference is and the overlap is between occupation and activity. You want to make sure you understand these slides thoroughly, and then you want to start thinking about what is grading up and grading down and adaptations. Okay, so good luck on your projects. We'll be, spending an extensive amount of time in class on our on-sites working on it, but hopefully this gives you a good general understanding to start off from. Make sure you also watch the videos that have the samples and the examples of an activity analysis. I think that will help you a lot. All right, good luck, guys.